In the summer of 1462, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II marched into southern Romania. He was a veteran general who had personally overseen the capture of Constantinople. But as his forces approached the capital of Wallachia, they stopped dead in their tracks. The sight before them forced a full retreat. Vlad the Impaler filled the countryside with the Forest of the Dead. He impaled an estimated 20,000 men, women, and children on tall wooden stakes. Many were still alive when the Ottomans arrived, groaning in the heat. Ending a human life is biologically simple. A blade to the throat or an arrow to the chest requires almost no logistical planning. But carefully lubricating blunt stakes and methodically hoisting thousands of human bodies into the air, ensuring the spikes avoid vital organs, so the victims survive for days, requires a significant engineering and labor effort. We find this same investment of state resources across ancient Rome, through imperial China, and medieval Europe. Why did these civilizations dedicate vast amounts of time and manpower to overcomplicate the act of death? The immense labor required for these displays points to a specific utility. We are seeing the evolution of engineered suffering, where execution functioned as a psychological weapon used to solve precise political problems. One major functional category of state violence was the deterrent. Ancient Rome perfected this approach through the mechanics of crucifixion. A Roman cross used gravity to attack the respiratory system. Downward pull on the suspended arms compressed the chest cavity, making inhaling impossible. To take a breath, the victim pushed their weight up against the nail in their heels, inhaled, and collapsed back down. The Romans maximized this effect by placing crosses along major transit routes. Following the Spartacus rebellion, 6,000 captives were crucified along the Appian Way. For anyone traveling to Rome, navigating the city meant walking past 120 miles of rotting, screaming corpses. Centuries later, Barbary pirates used a similar logic with the hooks. Disobedient captives were shoved from the top of Algerian city walls. They fell onto giant iron spikes, snagging at random angles. The metal tore through limbs and ribs, leaving them dangling to bake in the sun. The deterrent prioritized long-term survival over speed. It turned the individual into a screaming billboard, designed to paralyze the surviving populace with fear. While the deterrent relied on public exposure, other punishments moved into the shadows. This was the logic of the Inquisition. In the early hours of November 5, 1605, Guy Fawkes was discovered with enough gunpowder to destroy the English Parliament. He was taken to the subterranean chambers of the Tower of London. King James needed names and authorized methodical, hidden interrogation. To extract information, interrogators used the rack. As chains bound the victim's limbs, a ratchet mechanism applied slow, incremental tension, dislocating joints with mechanical precision. Tools like the rack, or the boots used in France, were calibrated to avoid major organs. The torturer's job was to increase physical agony while preventing the release of death or the dullness of shock. The Inquisition functioned as a demonstration of the state's dominion over the human mind. It physically dismantled the victim's resistance until they surrendered their deepest secrets. The final category, the annihilation, was reserved for crimes that threatened the core of the social order. This included the Chinese practice of lingji and European flaying. These public executions transformed bustling city centers into ritualized theaters of dismemberment. Executioners would take a scalpel to a living victim, removing sections of the thighs, arms, and chest one slice at a time. In Confucian ethics, the integrity of the physical body was inseparable from one's spiritual legacy. By slicing a body into fragments, the state severed the victim's connection and denied them an afterlife as a whole person. European flaying relied on a similar spiritual horror. By boiling and then peeling away the skin in a single sheet, the executioner removed the victim's face. What remained on the scaffold was no longer a recognizable individual, but a raw biological specimen. Annihilation methods systematically dismantled the victim's physical form and spiritual identity, unmaking them as a human being entirely. By the late 18th century, Enlightenment thinkers rejected these public spectacles in favor of swift, equal justice. The guillotine was born from this desire for a more progressive, clinical method of execution. Its efficiency successfully sanitized the act of killing, but that sanitation created a new danger. Because the machine made execution fast and cheap, it enabled the industrialized slaughter of 17,000 people during the French Revolution. In the modern era, we have attempted to reach the ultimate clinical execution through lethal injection, a medicalized procedure involving gurneys, sterile IV lines, and a precise sequence of drugs. But the 2014 execution of Clayton Lockett in Oklahoma exposed the fragility of this medical veneer. After staff failed 8 times to find a usable vein, they botched the chemical process. Lockett writhed and groaned for over 40 minutes before eventually dying of a heart attack. We have moved execution behind prison walls and replaced the rack with medical language. Yet the state's capacity to engineer profound human suffering remains a fundamental part of modern civilization.